President Donald Trump reportedly wants a full investigation into circumstances surrounding Jeffrey Epstein's death. Epstein allegedly committed suicide at a federal detention facility in New York while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. So for more information, I'm joined now by our correspondent, William Denslow, live from New York. William, thanks a lot for joining us this afternoon, obviously your morning. Talk to us about the circumstances surrounding Jeffrey Epstein's death.
Well, all questions here in New York are how this was exactly allowed to happen, considering the fact there are widespread reports that Mr. Epstein tried to commit suicide several weeks beforehand. He was found unconscious in that incident with marks on his neck in what many thought was an apparent suicide attempt. Now, he was put on suicide watch. He was then removed from suicide watch. So not only the president, but also the US Attorney General William Barr is calling for investigations from the Inspector General. We also understand the FBI is investigating this as well. Now, we have had developments and reporting from the New York Times in the US media on Wednesday. They've come out and said that several of the guards that were supposed to be checking on Mr. Epstein every 30 minutes were reportedly asleep for at least 3 hours and not checking as they were supposed to. Mr. Epstein was also supposed to be in a cell with a cellmate. That didn't transpire. He was in a cell on his own. We understand that two prison officials have been put on administrative leave. The warden has been reassigned, but investigations into the suspected suicide are expected to very much continue.
At this particular moment, one cannot rule out foul play. However, William, the big question is who would want to see this individual removed, especially as you're mentioning, weeks before he actually takes the stand?
Absolutely. We're still waiting for the official coroner's and autopsy report, but signs at this stage very much suggesting an apparent suicide. But as you so rightly mentioned, there's been plenty of conjecture, plenty of conspiracy theories that have been completely unfounded or unsubstantiated as things stand. We've even had President Trump himself retweeting some of these unfounded conspiracy theories, even pointing the finger of blame at the Clintons for an alleged involvement. Of course, it's incredibly important to stress that this completely unfounded allegation but the message is that there are a number of wealthy and famous people that are believed to have associations with Mr. Epstein that at the very least look somewhat embarrassing, not least the president himself that had relationship with Mr. Epstein in the past. The president has tried to distance himself very much, saying recently that he's not a fan of Mr. Epstein's, but also the likes of Bill Clinton had an association. Also Prince Andrew in the UK, the Duke of York. There are pictures of him with Mr. Epstein's close associate and a girl who was 17 at the time. Now, the Duke of York has denied any wrongdoing, as has a statement coming out from Buckingham Palace. But of course, we expect civil suits to very much continue. We expect those that had close ties with Mr. Epstein to be investigated too. So this investigation isn't expected to die with Mr. Epstein.
Well, I mean, William, just before we let you go, I mean, this is a developing story, one that it appears to be more dramatic, one moment after the next. Could it possibly be, adding now to the conspiracy theory, that someone did not want Mr. Epstein to talk, especially given the fact that he was on charges of sex trafficking, that someone within that ring did not want him to divulge unnecessary information that could implicate others and possibly people that are within the higher echelons of power?
Well, I think at this stage it's important to note that there's nothing to point to foul play, but of course this investigation and series of investigations is very much underway. But what we can expect and what we do know is that a civil lawsuit has been filed by Jennifer Arose, who was 14 when she accuses Mr. Epstein of sexual abuse. She then said that she was part of sexual grooming and that she was raped in 2002. She's also laid the finger of blame at Ghislaine Maxwell, who is a close associate associate of Mr. Epstein. She is also named in this lawsuit that presses charges of this lawsuit against her as well as Mr. Epstein's estate. So essentially the message coming from attorneys is that more lawsuits from more alleged victims are expected to be on the way, and what we can expect from these is more scrutiny into exactly what was the involvement and what was the scale of this alleged sex trafficking ring and who exactly was involved.
William, we're going to leave it there for this afternoon, but thanks a lot for joining us and shedding some light in terms of the developments of that story.